hazardous. She's only 17, made us curious. It was a carefree time. How about we jump back and rewind? We were living on Winger and a prayer, just garbage pail kids with mullets and big hair. Let's open up another pack. Gen X wants their future back. Break out the denim jackets and faded band patches. Share memories, Polaroid captured. It's the Gen X marks, the spot podcast.
Good, whatever time of day it is, you are listening to the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast from the Wherever I May Roam studio. I am your host, Joe Augustine. I cannot be more excited about today's guest. We have Maddi Lane joining us, daughter of the legendary frontman Jani Lane of Warrant. And if you say, who the hell is Jani Lane? You can just turn this podcast off right now, because if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, you know his name, you know his band, and you know his songs, especially Cherry Pie, Heaven, and Sometimes She Cries. Those are just a few. There's a lot more great songs out there. Maddi is here today. She's going to be talking about keeping her father's legacy alive through social media, her own music, and connecting with his fans. On a more serious note, Maddi is going to be talking about how she navigates grief with the loss of her father and how she's trying to find her own voice as a freelancer, a creative strategist, and a content producer for e-commerce brands. Today's episode of Gen X Marks the Spot podcast isn't just big talk, it's real talk. And Maddi, she has a motto: please be open-minded and kind-hearted. And you know what? That's exactly the kind of energy she is bringing to today's conversation. And hell, that should be a motto for everyone. Just be open-minded and kind-hearted. Wouldn't life be great? Hell yeah. So let's change lanes right now from Jani to Maddi. Here's my interview.
Well, hey, I want to thank you for being a part of my podcast. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on.
I've had a lot of celebrities and musicians on here, but you were the one I was most excited about when you agreed to be on my podcast.
Oh, I sweet. Thank you. I appreciate that. I know my dad would also very much appreciate that. If he was here, he would have loved to hop on with me right here. Maybe he's here in spirit.
I would love to have had your dad on my show. And I'm sure you hear this all the time, but I have to say it. Your dad was hands down my favorite front man growing up.
Yeah. A lot of people still message me and tell me how they loved seeing my dad perform and how not only was he a great frontman and showman, but also how great he was off stage, how he made everyone feel very, like he was very down to earth. He made everyone feel like they were his friend, and he took his time. He loved talking to the fans. I don't think he even liked calling them fans. He liked just calling them like, yeah, the people I saw after the show, like they were awesome. So I don't remember much from that time, obviously, because I was very young, but I always remember him being very eager to talk with people and fans. And then also now people remind me every day, they message me, and it's really sweet to think that he left that big of an impact on them. Maybe meeting him for like 5 minutes, that's crazy.
The thing with your dad for me, just knowing how I grew up in the 80s, we didn't have cable television. But I remember the first time I actually watched MTV that was live and not recorded on a VHS and given to me by friends. The very first video I ever saw was Heaven. Just that feel of like, whoa, I'm watching this live. And for me, it was live anyway. And just seeing the video was the first time I ever saw it. And to me, at that moment in time, I was like, Jani Lane is my guy, my front man. And from there on out, I just followed Warrant.
Well, that's super cool to hear. Yeah, he had a very eclectic career. I obviously got a little bit from my dad as far as that goes. I love being on camera and telling a story. I do like writing as well. I don't post about my writing as much, but just as he would write songs, I do write poetry and kind of song like I would say like poems too. So I just enjoy telling stories, and then that's kind of translated into visual media and storytelling and making videos online, whether it's for fun, whether I'm just showing parts of my life and making people laugh, or I'm doing it for a brand. So I'm helping promote their service or product in a fun way that still feels authentic, like you're not being sold on something. That's kind of like my mission right now. So yeah, if he was here and I was working alongside him, I would love to make funny videos with him and get him on TikTok and doing all these funny dances and trends. He probably would get a kick out of it. Maybe he would be a little bit annoyed about it. I remember he would always give me a hard time for liking like certain like hip hop songs. And he's like, that's not like classic rock and roll. And so I feel like he would go along with it, but I don't know, maybe grudgingly, but I would try and keep him relevant and with the young people, I guess. But people still know his music from Guitar Hero. A lot of my friends that are like my age, I say Warrant, and they're like, "Oh, who's that?" And then I'm like, "Oh, Cherry Pie from Guitar Hero," and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know who that is." So I still find ways, I guess, to keep his legacy alive, and I share with people that he's my dad, and people get a kick out of it and love it. But yeah, I feel like kind of creating and being online is almost like my way of kind of channeling his energy in some ways and expressing myself like he did. I also do music projects too, which I can get into, but I haven't done as many recently. Maybe in the near future, I want to hop in the studio and do some more. But
So you said music projects, is that with bands or your own that you're working on?
normally covers. I have written a song or two, and I've put out one song on my Bandcamp, but I don't normally write and put out a lot, at least at the moment. But I would like to honestly get back into it just for fun. Maybe someone would pick it up and want to sing on my songs. I'm not necessarily interested in being the front woman and taking my music out on tour and performing on stages. I've done covers of my dad's songs with a tribute band a few years ago in Cleveland.
Right.
It is fun. It's just not maybe my passion to be the one on stage garnering all the lights and spotlight and everything. But I do enjoy recording and I do enjoy writing. So maybe doing more behind the scenes work or working alongside an artist and helping them write would be really cool. I'm also wanting to do some more videos around my dad and my experience growing up with him and what I learned, about the industry and, kind of how I was able to bond with him for the time he was here and how it's impacted me healing and grieving his loss and all of that. So I made one video on my Instagram a couple months ago about it, kind of like introducing everything, but I haven't gotten around to continuing it. But I think it'd be really cool to share more insights about growing up as the daughter of a rock star, kind of living a semi-normal life now, not really in the spotlight, I would say, but people know of it. So I'm like a semi-public figure, but kind of just trying to like lay low too and have my privacy and not exploit myself either. So it's an interesting balance.
Now, the video that you're talking about, was that the one that had the like little shrine with your dad and so forth? You were,
Hmm.
yeah, I saw that. I
Yep,
saw
I
that.
still have it. I've actually moved apartments since then, but I still have a lot of his stuff here, and I'm hoping to get more stuff from different family and my mom over time. I know it's kind of scattered, but
Mhm.
I love having his things with me, and I love being able to share like little snippets of my life. And if he can be involved in those videos, that would be awesome. And I know a lot of his fans and people like you would love to see that. So yeah, I'm finding ways to integrate him into my content too.
Yesterday, it was your dad's 62nd birthday, February 1st. I got to thinking about that, and my mother had passed away on February 4th, 4 years ago. You've lost a parent, I've lost a parent. How are you handling coping with, losing your father and such? Because I know for me, losing my mom, it has been extremely rough.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to hear about your mom, by the way.
Thank you.
It's never easy to grieve a parent or anybody in your life for that matter, but a parent, it definitely hits you differently. They're the person that was with you, since you were small, and they've raised you and watched you grow and transform into the person you are. And, you start to resonate more with them or empathize with them as you get older because you become a parent, or, you get older and you're like, oh, I understand maybe why they were saying these things to me or what they were trying to do, even when I didn't want to hear it sometimes. And you kind of can reflect and be appreciative over time. But with my dad, I lost him at 12. So I was pretty young and we had a tumultuous, I would say, relationship upbringing together. I wasn't with him all the time. He would be gone on the road performing and writing music in LA. I would be in Ohio a lot of the time. He would come home and I would see him kind of like sporadically. And I enjoyed that, but there were also times where it wasn't so enjoyable, where maybe he was struggling and in his addiction, and him and my mom were not getting along. So there were some great days, there were some not great days, and really bad days, that were a little scary for me. But overall, I always wanted to get to know my dad more and wish I could have had a more cohesive relationship with him, I guess, if that's the best way to put it. But I did live with him for a few years in California. I was like third grade to fifth grade. It was kind of the most one-on-one time I'd ever had with him in my entire life. And I really got to know him more. We, built a bond and went and roller skated and went to the amusement park and always had fun together, But I noticed he would struggle and kind of isolate himself, and I would stay with friends or other family until he would get better. But it's interesting grieving him because I didn't fully know him. Again, I only knew him as much as my 11 and 12-year-old brain could really comprehend. And I would see him on the road sometimes. I would go with him to rehearsals, and I knew he was a rock star, but I didn't know the impact he had yet. So after he passed, it was a shock, but I kind of was preparing for the worst all along because I knew it could have happened. So I was still in shock and denial for a long time, but I kind of wrote it off as like, oh, my dad's he's in LA right now. I'm in North Carolina. That's where I was at the time when he passed, and I'm still here now. But I kind of compartmentalized that as I'm just not going to see my dad for a while, or I'm not living with him, rather than like really accepting he was gone. That was the way I kind of did that in like late middle school into high school. And then once I went to college, it hit harder. I'm getting older and I'm seeing my friends and their parents, and you have boy problems and you want to be able to have your dad, and it started to hit harder and harder. And now I'm 28 years old and I'm still kind of grieving every year. It feels a little bit different, but I wouldn't say it goes away, but it does get easier, I guess, to be able to accept and know that he's in a better place and that I can feel him with me all the time. And, everything happens for a reason, but also I do have a little bit of anger from not being able to have more time with him and not being able to maybe even spend the time with him better if I would have known, but there's no way I could have known. So it's just very interesting, but it's cool to be able to do music and, have fans talk about him to me all the time. It like keeps his energy alive, and, I get to create music and do different things that kind of honor him along the way. So he's still here, just in a different form, I guess. Maybe not physically, but spiritually. And I try to embody him as much as I can. I guess from what I know of him now, as I've gotten older, I've kind of created a kind of image of him and what he was like. And people have told me, like, you're very much like him in different ways. So I just try to embody that and live my life, kind of authentically myself and unapologetically myself, like he would have wanted me to. And just be gracious to myself, I think, because I know he was very hard on himself. So one thing I do take from everything is to be easy on yourself and to just take it day by day, step by step.
Yeah, that's the same here. Just grieving, and you never forget them. I think about my mom every day. I don't know if you know who Todd Poole is.
The name sounds familiar. I know I hear lots of names kind of thrown around from his past, but yeah, you can let me know.
So Todd is the lead singer of the band Roxy Blue. I interviewed him a few months back, and, we were just going to be talking about some new music that was coming up and such. And all of a sudden, the conversation went into Jani Lane, and he hung out with your dad and members of Warrant. And he goes to me, he goes, have you ever heard the story of how Jani Lane had the really superimposed lips on the Cherry Pie video?
Yeah, so I've obviously seen the video a bunch, and I know the big mouth. I've heard different things about whether it was like CGI or like there was a real prosthetic mouth on him during the video, but what was he saying about it?
Well, he had said that they were all hanging out at a local tavern, and one of the members, wasn't your dad, of Warrant, was supposedly hitting on a female, and the female's boyfriend was there and went to punch one of the members of Warrant, and they ducked, and he caught your dad, cold cocked him, busted his mouth open and everything like that. So they were in the process of shooting the Cherry Pie video, and after having like immediate surgery and such, they had to do something for that last part of the video. So they kind of made it look real cheesy in order for them not to show that he had got surgery and was punched in the face. I thought that was like an amazing story. Like I never knew. I just thought it was something that they came up with for the video shoot.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually had never heard that story, so it's funny, like I hear stories over time now, and since he's been gone, it's kind of like interesting to hear all the different parts of my dad and things that he had been through. And I can't all like obviously ask him or confirm any of
Right.
it, but I can imagine that, of course, like my dad happens to be caught in the middle of a fight that he wasn't even in and just got hit. And then yeah, maybe they improvised in the moment, and him being creative and on the fly, probably they were like, yeah, let's make it funny, or let's play into it, while kind of hiding it. I could see that. Yeah.
So many people in the music industry, and I'm sure you know this, some of the stories are just so funny, about your dad, and I never bring his name up. He just seems to pop up, and they're all good stories and all positive stories.
That's awesome. Yeah, he definitely had a charisma and a charm and kind of a very humble nature to him that everyone very much picked up on, even my family that met him. My aunt and uncle, they're in Wilmington, and they're kind of like my home base. I go home to them, and they're kind of like my stand-in kind of parental figures. But yeah, they met him a couple times, and they were like, yeah, he's like gentle giant, like he goes out and rocks out, but then he's such like a softie and like very like well spoken, and like he's very intentional in his interactions, and like made you feel like you were the only person in the room. So I know he's left that mark on a lot of people, and I hope I do the same thing. But yeah, I love hearing stories. It kind of puts some pieces together for me because again, I didn't get to spend a lot of quality time with him. I did maybe younger, but again, I don't have the clearest memories. There are moments that stick out to me about my dad, but it's cool to put the pieces together. And I'm just grateful I had the time with him that I did, but I kind of have to live off of like hearsay and stories and kind of digital memories and pictures and listening to his song. So yeah. Also, I don't know if you have a favorite Warren song. I always like to ask people. Lately, I've always really liked this song, but Stronger Now. I always
Yes.
come back to that one. It resonates a lot with me just because you're overcoming something that you thought you would die, and I'm so much stronger now. That's kind of my mantra for life in general. So, and I love the chord progression in his voice. It's just so like simple, but very effective message. What's your favorite one?
Well, I hate to say it, but it's Cherry Pie.
That's your
But
favorite?
it's my favorite. And I know the story, your dad never liked cherry pie. That song just did not belong on that album that was released because
Yeah, I agree.
it is just so contrast to what the rest of the album was. If let's just take cherry pie out of the equation, and I'm also going to take heaven out of there because those are my two favorites. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be Mr. Rainmaker.
That's a great choice. Yeah,
Thank
it's funny
you.
when you mentioned cherry pie. Of course, I immediately think of even when he was around and I lived with him some, I remember him mentioning that, the cherry pie guy, like I have this reputation now, and it's awesome that it, catapulted and did all these things, but it's not all I am. Like I'm known for so much more. I want to be known for so much more, and he had such lyrical talent that song didn't really showcase, but the story that he wrote it in like 15 minutes when his label was putting pressure saying like we need a hit, the
Mhm.
fact that he could do that in 15 minutes and it became a smash hit, like he clearly had the skill and the talent, to write a hit song. I don't think he gave himself enough credit for that. I think he kind of felt like he sold out or something. But it's a great song. It's very catchy. Like it's very clever. Like I think he was really hard on himself for that one. But obviously he had a lot of other songs too that showcased many different other other talents of his and other versions of him. More depth, I would say. But yeah, Cherry Pie is an all-time favorite. Yeah, for sure. I love Mr. Rainmaker. I love Blind Faith.
Oh
Also a
yeah.
great one. I try to live by that as well. Not really knowing. You can't always see everything to believe it, but you have to kind of just walk blindly and know things are going to work out. So that's a great one too.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course Uncle Tom's Cabin, love that song as well.
That one's so cool. I always love my Uncle Rick's intro. He played the guitar in the intro before my dad started singing on the acoustic, and he killed it. He's so talented too. Clearly runs in the family. But yeah, I love the music video for that one too. That one's super fun. Maybe I'll cover that one at some point. I haven't done that one yet. I've done Heaven, Sometimes She Cries, Stronger Now. What else? There's one other one I've done of his. Heaven, did I ever say that?
You did?
I haven't done Uncle Tom's Cabin. I would love to do a cover of that. Blind Faith would also be another one. Maybe those two would be up in the queue when I decide to hop in the studio again. Any of his ballads were great.
Oh, hands down. I mean, your dad wrote some deeply emotional ballads. Did he ever talk to you or anyone that you've talked to about where that vulnerability in his songwriting came from?
He never told me specifically, I guess, because obviously I was very young and I wouldn't have understood. But I imagine, I mean, he went through a lot. I know even in childhood, and I've talked to a lot of my family members now and kind of have put some things together about how he was growing up and that he was extremely intelligent, very creative, but struggled in school and had trouble staying focused and maybe felt a little alienated or odd one out, but extremely athletic, talented, all these things. I think he always had an exterior, like he put on very well, like showman, like he was good at putting on for everyone, but I think deep down he never really felt fully whole or fulfilled or felt like something was missing or different about him is what I catch on to. And obviously, as he got, more famous, I think he kind of had this imposter syndrome and maybe felt like he didn't deserve it or he couldn't believe maybe, everything was happening, but then it got taken away and, he struggled with his addiction. So I think it was like this, like, he was always in a state of maybe flux or not quite feeling settled into who he was. Was he the front man? Was he himself? Was he a father? Was he I think there was a lot of roles that he felt like maybe he wasn't able to be his best in, or he was splitting himself around so much. I think he was just, yeah, really critical of himself. And I think he probably used a lot of those experiences and, maybe with love and relationships, obviously, too, and his addiction. Like, he really, I think that was his, like, escape or, like, his cathartic release was to write and kind of express his emotions. Because I think he had trouble articulating how he felt, just to the everyday person, like his daughter or family or friend. But, like, in a song, he was able to put his feelings into, music and find the right words there, which I can kind of relate to. I'm kind of similar. I'm not the best at articulating my emotions, but I'm really good at writing them and expressing them more creatively. So I also love using writing as a form of like therapy almost. So that was probably his therapy, honestly. And it kind of helped him get some things off his chest that he wouldn't say normally. I wish he could have continued to do that, and found a different way than what the way he chose. But yeah.
Back in the 80s, of course, your dad lived through the peak of, we want to call it the hair metal scene, hard rock scene. What do you think his take today would be on the rock scene?
I don't like particularly, I guess, keep up with a lot of like current like rock or like modern rock. I do listen to it on occasion, or I do see it on playlists, or I'll hear it on the radio. I think he really loved back when I was living with him. We would listen to music in the car together all the time. He would always rag on me for liking the hip hop and pop and stuff like that he thought maybe wasn't as deep or, not real instrumentation, a lot of these things. But I was like, oh, Dad, let me listen to my music. But I did like that at the time, and he really liked I think like All American Rejects and
Oh, yeah.
Muse was one that he really liked. There's a couple others like Foo Fighters. There's definitely a few that he really got into and that he liked. I think he wanted to work with Muse or wanted to like do some sort of collaborations that sounded kind of like that. So kind of like going in the pop rock direction, but still using, obviously all the instrumentation, maybe leaning more ballad. I think that was always my dad's sweet spot was like songs that had a lot of emotion conveyed in the melody and the lyrics. So finding artists that were doing that already, maybe like the Killers, people like that, I feel like really would have probably resonated with him now, or I could see him collaborating and doing something with them. But yeah, I think he was kind of a chameleon at times. I think he definitely stood out in a lot of ways, obviously, and like left a lasting impact when he was, truly himself. I think towards the end of his career, I think he kind of felt out of place or didn't know exactly what identity he wanted to fall into. Was it, leaning into like, like more modern rock? Was it going more metal again? Was it I think he felt that he had his niche in the hair metal and then that kind of got taken away and grunge came in. And then I think ever since he had been kind of like finding his footing or trying to fit back in and find something that resonated with him and everyone else. And there was just a mismatch. And I think that really got to him. I think he felt a little out of place. But I think he would have had a lot of fun, and especially how music has evolved. Even I would have loved to have seen him do some fusion, even with different genres. Maybe it's like country rock a little bit. Maybe I don't think he liked country very much, but even seeing some of that hybrid, or there's like, rock, jazz fusions. Like I would
Mhm.
have loved to have seen him branch out a little bit and get experimental. And maybe I could have even done some stuff with him on that front because I love influences of like jazz and like R&B, pop. So even electronic music would have been cool. I know a lot of artists like Sullivan King. He's a artist that does like EDM music, but
Mhm.
also like he sings and kind of like more on the metal side of things. It's really cool. I'm like, God, I like think of my dad sometimes, and I'm like, that would have been so awesome if he would have integrated, and brought his raw talent and skill and voice and everything and lyricism to newer genres. That would have been so cool.
Yeah, and you were saying how your dad never liked country, but yet so many of his ballads could be country songs nowadays. I'm thinking Heaven and I Saw Red and such like that. I mean,
Yeah, 100% he was. Yeah, it'd be cool to take some of his vocals or even unreleased music. I've thought about doing this a lot. Again, life happens and I don't always have the bandwidth to do so, but I would love to sit down. Maybe someone could help me put together like maybe like reimagine his music. I know people are doing that right now. I just haven't, I haven't wanted to sign contracts and get involved with too many different third parties and do all of that. Just gets a little confusing, but it'd be cool on my own accord, maybe with Warrant or whoever else has access to some of his older demos to be able to put out reimagined versions, whether I sing with him or maybe I put his vocals over a different track. Maybe that sounds more modern. Like, what would my dad sound like now in 2026? What would he have been singing on? What kinds of tracks? Also, singing with him would be awesome. A duet of some sort would be great. So, yeah, my wheels are turning, and I think I'm at a point now this year where I have a little bit more time to be able to get back into some music projects like that. So, TBD, we'll see. I think that'd be fun.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You're young. You got a lot of time to do that. So, and believe me, I don't think your dad's memory from all of us who grew up just loving him is going to go anywhere anytime soon.
I don't think so either. I think probably at least for the next like 40, 50 years, I could see his music becoming resurfacing. I mean, a lot of artists nowadays, their music will be popular in the 80s and 90s, and then it comes back, and now the 2020s, 2010s. So I see his music being, it's definitely everlasting. I feel like, it'll always be just good music.
Absolutely.
So.
And
I'm
and
excited to see where it goes. If you have any other questions too, I don't have a complete hard stop. I can answer if you have any like really good hard hitting ones that you wanted to ask.
well,
I'm down to answer.
I thought about a lot of questions, and I know you had 30 minutes, and I didn't want to, dig too far deep, and then we weren't able to finish it up. But one of the things that I did want to know is how is your relationship with the original members of Warrant?
Yeah, I have a pretty good relationship with them, especially Jerry. Me and him talk very frequently. Just, he's there to support and just talk to me about anything that Warrant's doing or any ways he can help me and support me. He's just super cool. He feels like a cool uncle now that I have. So I really appreciate him. I don't talk to the other members one on one as often, but collectively, I shout out the Warrant Instagram page a lot, or I'll DM the guy who runs it. And when I start making more videos about my dad, I would love to keep tagging them and kind of, build a community and people can see what I'm up to because some people may not know that I'm online or that I'm still, kind of like, putting out content around him or maybe some music in the future. So yeah, that'll be super exciting. You guys can find me. It's Maddi Lane on Instagram if you want to see what I'm doing. I do a lot of videos for brands, lifestyle videos of myself. Hopefully some new series about my dad. And if people want to know more about that, if people want to reach out to me and let me know, hey, I want to hear more about this, or hey, I'd love to see you post things. I love taking inspiration from people and giving the people what they want to see, I guess. So I'm an open book on that front. And also, if there's any other time, I guess you'd want to like talk to me too, we can always chat at a different time. I'm always open to interviews. I love doing this. I think it's fun to kind of get myself into some different parts of the world and on different Facebook pages and out there talking about him because yeah, I think it's cool to be able to live through my dad a little bit and share anything that might make people fans of his really happy to hear, you know, just being a light.
For being 28, and this is coming from an old head, so, correct me if I'm wrong, but you really seem focused, balanced, got a good head on your shoulders. You're very creative. And, one of the things that I did notice that you're really into fitness as well.
I am. Yeah, I'm a fitness instructor. I just started a couple months ago, actually, after getting certified. So that's been very fun. I actually want to do like a rock themed class. I do cycle, so obviously the beat of the music is very important when you're cycling and keeping all the participants in your class kind of, on beat, energized in the moment. So I want to feature my dad soon and do like a rock, kind of like a throwback rock class. So that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, I love fitness. Definitely a way for me to express myself again creatively and also do something good for my body and make sure I feel good. So I've been enjoying that a lot too. I know I touched on earlier something about like from when he was a child, like things he was going through. I kind of skimmed over that, but
Mhm.
something that people don't know. I don't know exactly. I'm not like a licensed psychiatrist, so I can't diagnose anything. But he was diagnosed with lots of things throughout his life. But
Hmm.
talking to some of his sisters, my aunts, and reconnecting with my family on my dad's side has been very healing. But I've kind of, been doing some self-discovery and trying to figure out, obviously I've been through a lot. So I know trauma does affect the brain and how I view myself and kind of navigating relationships. And that's been a whole journey. I'm in therapy, just working through things all the time. But something also kind of more on the genetic front, it was suspected he had ADHD, which is something that I think at the time wasn't really talked about. And, he had a lot of anxiety and was very smart, but struggled in school, had trouble focusing, but super creative, could hyper focus on something he really loved. All these things that were so characteristic of him that I hear now. And I'm like, oh, like he must have had ADHD. Like it just is, I love researching it because I suspect and I've gotten tested for it. And it's pretty, I'm pretty sure I do, but again, I don't like to fully diagnose and labels aren't everything, but I suspect there was some neurodivergence on his side and it's helped me understand myself better because, coming from my mom and my dad and both of them I think had their own neurodivergence and different traumas in their childhoods that definitely affected me genetically and environmentally and everything. So it's been interesting hearing things about him now as I'm an adult at the age that he was probably experiencing a lot of these hardships and maybe inner critic with himself and maybe he didn't feel like everyone else and felt different and maybe had trouble just functioning like a normal human being. I don't know. I have days like that too, where I'm like, like I feel like something's different about me, or I don't feel like I quite click and connect with people like everyone else does, or I feel like I'm outside looking in sometimes. But I try to look at it in a positive light, it's like maybe that's my superpower, and maybe that's part of him that can live in me too. Like maybe I'm the version of him that, kind of made it and kept living and kept trying to figure it out, and was able to keep going and keep smiling, even when it does get hard and it's confusing because I'm still figuring a lot out. I definitely don't have it all figured out, but I'm grateful for the steps I've taken, I guess, like taking accountability for not letting my life just kind of be what it was. I could have taken many paths and blamed a lot of people for things and been a victim, but I was like, it's my life. I want to, regardless of what happened, it's my responsibility to keep moving and heal and work on myself and be a good person, break the cycle. Like you don't want to continue the cycle, especially of addiction. So I've been very intentional about boundaries with alcohol. And if I sense myself even getting too, dependent on something, I try to back away and, be very introspective, I guess. So that's helped a lot. But yeah, there's a lot to my dad. He was very complex, and I wish I could ask him now and know all these things for sure. But I know he had a lot going on upstairs that a
Hmm.
lot of people were not aware of. And it's almost like I feel him in me sometimes. Like I'm like, I can feel where he would have probably struggled in a similar situation, or I could see why he was so misunderstood and very sensitive to criticism or rejection. Like I am too. Like it's cool. Like I feel like I get to relate to him now kind of as I get older and I'm kind of figuring out who I am kind of through him in some ways.
I love how you sum that up. And, one of the things that you said about him having a superpower, it just struck me because I'm diagnosed with anxiety with OCD tendencies. And I always say that my OCD is actually my own superpower because I'm always thinking ahead. I'm always planning out. I try to be as perfect as I possibly can be. A lot of times I fail, but I also feel that OCD has been a blessing to me. And you may think this is completely wrong. I always plan for the worst, but expect the best. And maybe those were some of the tendencies too that your father had with OCD, like writing the perfect song, being the perfect person. And then when I know for me, if I don't live up to that, I am so hard on myself.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm sorry to hear that you do struggle with that, but it's great to hear that you reframe it in a positive way and you kind of use it as your own superpower. That's definitely something I can relate to. I'm definitely kind of a perfectionist and can be hard on myself, and I prepare for the worst, hope for the best a lot of times. But yeah, I think it's all about what you say to yourself and how you talk to yourself too. You could create your own reality by saying like, oh, I'm lacking in something, I'm not good enough, I'm never always using absolutes or like using things like never always you should do this, should do that. I try to like get rid of that in my vocabulary altogether because it can be, without realizing it, very detrimental to your self-worth, your self-image, how you navigate the world, the energy you give off. So I always try to just maybe take a step back. If I do have those thoughts, I like write it down and then I'll look at it and try to reframe it, and then I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
like maybe I don't have to view it that way. Like my thoughts might be saying this, but that doesn't mean it's true.
Right.
Thoughts and feelings are indicators, they're not fake. I mean, they're valid, but they're not always the truth, and you can always change them and almost like partner with them. Like your inner
Hmm.
world can be your own little counsel, but you shape how they respond to things and how they act too. So it's like a continuous partnership within yourself, I guess, to kind of like become friends and integrate with parts of yourself rather than like rejecting and almost being scared of parts of yourself. I felt like when I try to reject and I'm like, no, I shouldn't do that. That's wrong. That's bad. It makes it worse.
Right.
It's like a child in the basement. I do a lot of like therapy stuff. IFS is like interfamily systems therapy, which has been really cool for me to kind of treat the parts of yourself that you exile or that you don't want to get hurt or that you're ashamed of. You treat them like kids are in the basement. You kind of like lock them away and you don't want anyone to see them. But when you bring them up and you can integrate with them and talk through things with them and like, feel like they're on your team and they're not against you,
Mhm.
it's been really helpful, I guess, to be able to navigate life that way better and like, talk to myself in my different parts and why they might be hurting and why they might be showing up a certain way. And why do I feel like I have to be perfect? Or why is my value so placed on these things I'm doing? Like I'm valued just because I have value just in who I am. Like it's not what I'm doing. So constant reminders of that has been helpful. And I would love to, again, I wish my dad would have maybe had some of those resources or had people in his ear saying these things.
Mhm.
Maybe he did. It's not, it's a very complex thing to talk someone out of, not wanting to be here or, taking it too far,
Right.
who knows if it was even intentional. I don't know where his mind was at that time.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's all about what you say to yourself. And again, I'm grateful for the time I had with him. And I'm so glad his memory still lives in us in so many ways.
Yeah.
And he left the impact that he did. And I'm so grateful. And I wouldn't be who I am today without my dad. And obviously physically wouldn't be here, but also all the things that happened have like kind of brought me to where I am today. And I'm super grateful. So yeah,
Yeah.
I guess that's a good place to probably wrap it up, huh?
Yeah,
On a
absolutely.
positive note.
Hey, maybe you'll wind up being a therapist someday.
Maybe I thought about it. I studied psychology in college. I just I didn't want to maybe be sitting in a room like carrying the weight of so many people's emotional issues and problems because I thought I might take it home and it'd be hard to differentiate. It might put weight on me, but actually I do tend to be the therapist for a lot of my friends and I love talking through things like this. So maybe not in a like a office in a chair, but maybe I can do speaking engagements or I can talk to people or make content around it, telling people how I navigate things. If it helps anybody, that would help one person. That would be amazing for me. So, but thank you for having me again. I've loved being able to share some of my life and my dad and get to know you too.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And for me, and I'm going to speak for a lot of Gen Xers, your dad was amazing singer, songwriter. And I know I said this before, he was the perfect front man for me. I know because he wasn't over the top, he wasn't too flamboyant, and he delivered what he wanted delivered in his songs. And he had probably the best voice because he wasn't a screamo type. He wasn't whatever type there was out there. He was just the perfect singer for me at the perfect time.
Yeah, he was like the Goldilocks theory. He was just right. There's a lot of frontmen that I would say I think the trend right now is to be a little more over the top and like the Harry Styles and Benson Boone and backflips off the stage and I think it's great, kind of the more Freddie Mercury approach, but my dad was more understated and I always appreciated that and I think a lot of people did too. So,
All right, Maddie. Well,
yeah.
hey, thank you again for being on the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast. And hopefully we can stay in touch and maybe do it again somewhere down the road.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks so much, Joseph.
And as I said in the beginning of the podcast, I don't think I have ever been more excited to have a guest as Maddi Lane on my show. Maddi, your dad would be absolutely incredibly proud of the woman you have become and the way you're keeping his music and his spirit alive. And for all of Jani Lane's fans out there, please go and support Maddi's work. You can find her music on Bandcamp, where she's released beautiful covers of her father's songs, including Heaven, Sometimes She Cries, and Stronger Now. And she also has some original music released. You can go and check all of this out on her Instagram at It's Maddi Lane. And that is Maddi with an I, no E at the end. It's Maddi Lane. It has been 15 years since Jani Lane left us, but his legacy is definitely living on through the incredible music of Warrant and through his daughter's talent, heart, and that same infectious personality that made him a legend. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and follow us on all our social media and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Hell, if you want to leave us a review, you can do that as well. And share all of this with your fellow rock fans. And remember, turn it up and never turn it down. That would go for Warrant and Maddi's music as well, and especially the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast. I'm your host, Joe Augustine. Peace out. Props everyone for listening.